So, hi, I'm Nicole. Firstly, thank you all for being here. Without you guys, this is the future of making a difference to the massive changes that need to happen. As introduced, my situation is one that you would think wouldn't affect midwives, but it does because I've had rainbow babies and you guys have to deal with me. I set up my charity Our Missing Peace because Ben died in 2012, but it was 2017 that had moved around quite a bit and found that the resources, it was a postcode lottery, and as a bereaved parent, Googling is really, really tricky. So I set up Our Missing Peace to make the conversation about child loss easier from miscarriage to adulthood. It's a forever thing. Every morning when I wake up and say good morning to my children, I say good morning to Ben, even though he's not in our arms. So, but I had this whole presentation planned about the power of people and all of this, that. And then on Wednesday, my 5-year-old broke his collarbone. He was spear tackled by his brother. And my 5-year-old, he has a little bit of frustration with communication, so I just thought he was moaning. And then my husband goes, "Oh no, I saw it, and I heard the crack." I'm like, "Oh right, okay, A&E." Now I have an aversion to A&E because when Ben died, we went to A&E and the outcome was not positive. So in 7 years, I've only been to A&E 3 times. I've never called 999. And it got to the other day when my Toby, again, he's quite clumsy, came home from school with concussion and the paramedics came out to us. So I don't necessarily trust the healthcare system and I feel like a massive inconvenience. So please bear that in mind when you are dealing with bereaved parents. Now, I got to A&E and I'm like, yeah, I'm well hard, I am. I go around the country talking to politicians and do TV shows and do Baby Lost Live events, and I do not need anybody to know that my kid died. I'm not the dead baby woman. I walk into A&E and I wear my badge wherever I go as a way to let other people talk to me. I didn't take my badge. I'm like, no, Toby's going to be fine. It's just a broken collarbone. We got the x-ray done. It was a broken collarbone, and he's very proud of the fact that he saw his bone and he's like, yeah, it's totally broken. I'm like, cheers, mate. And we went into the cubicle that I'd previously been in when Alistair needed his head stitched. They're boys, okay? And I remember being in that cubicle 4 months after Ben died with my son with a glued head, and it instantly took me back to that moment, and I am still shaky from it. So when this nurse, who bless her had no idea why she looked at me and went, everything's okay, and I nearly passed out. I went grey, and she's talking to me. She's like, this is how you look after the sling, and oh, it's a bit sticky out, so make sure if it does protrude to the skin, you come back. I'm like, yeah, no shit. She's chatting to me, and all I can think is, so where's the nearest place that I can lie down, because I'm about to go. Like, I am full on, and she looks at me and she went, you all right? And I went, oh, we've got history. And she was like, why? And I was like, oh yeah, so my son died in an accident and I'm just a little bit triggered. And she was like, oh shit. I was like, yeah, I probably should have led with that, as I would normally have done when walking into A&E, because A&E triggers my PTSD. And I didn't, because I thought I was brave. I'm 7 years in. Like, I don't need that. But Ben, my beautiful, beautiful Ben, who it was 7 years ago on the 12th of November, and it's his funeral anniversary next week. I don't normally cry at shit like this, I'm so sorry. I'm not sorry because I fucking love him, like, and it's as simple as that. But 7 years in, I don't know what I'm allowed anymore. I don't know. Society says I should be fixed. Society says that I am going to be okay. 2 years in, I very kindly, when we had to move from Scotland, where Ben's accident happened, down to London, somebody said, oh, why? And I went, because we've got grief. And they went, oh, is it still that? And that was 2 years in. 4 years in, when I started the charity, I had friends who now no longer can be in the same room as us, because they thought I was doing all right. And then when I said, well, actually, every time I meet somebody new, I have to make out whether or not I'm going to tell them about Ben. I make a split-second judgment when I meet somebody. Am I going to be friends with you, and do you need to know this? Because if I don't think you need to know this, I'm not going to tell you. If I think that we might be friends, I'm going to tell you because at some point there will be a conversation. Or if you're going to meet my kids, they're going to tell you. Alistair is very proud of his brother who lives in heaven, and Toby and Ed, who never met Ben, they are like, yeah, my brother's in heaven, where's yours? Like, they just don't get it. Like, their reality is that, like, they just fundamentally, and this is our reality is that babies die, children die, and it's very different. So now 7 years on, after 7 years of comments about, well, why are you still sad? Well, fucking shit, isn't it? Am I allowed to grieve still? And this has hit me over the last few weeks, is really strong. And actually, I love my children, I will talk about them. Am I allowed to access support? Now, because Ben died in an accident, I fall through the net. And there's many families who don't know that they can access support because they've had charities. Their remits are very strict for funding reasons, and they try their hardest, but funding is limited. And so I was very fortunate that Scottish Cot Death Trust were put in my direction, and so we were supported by the Scottish Cot Death Trust. When I moved out of Scotland, I got nothing. So the rainbow baby support that I got through the Scottish Cot Death Trust, I was turned down by 3 different charities because Ben didn't fit the remit. And that's not how it should be. And that was one of my massive driving forces of why I set up Our Missing Piece, was there is stuff out there. There are people willing to help. You just need to know where it is. And as a bereaved parent, you don't know where to go. And why should you? Why would anybody know where to go? One of the biggest things is, am I allowed to talk about it? So many people don't know. Now, I do. I go around the country. I speak to so many people, yet people don't know if they can talk to me about Ben. So even in that circumstance where I am an open book, this is what I do, this is my passion, they don't know if they can say their memory with Ben or ask about Ben. So if I'm in that position, what are normal families like? What are the average families? How do they feel? Because nobody knows how to talk about this. Everybody's scared that they're going to get it wrong, and a lot of it is fear-driven. Because nobody wants to upset anybody. And everybody's there going, oh, mental health this and mental health that. But if you actually ask anybody if they're okay, you don't know how to handle it when they go, nah, I'm not, I'm really shit. And this is where you guys coming to days like this makes a huge difference, because you're educating yourself and you're empowering yourself to have these conversations. Am I allowed to talk about them? Are we allowed to talk about them? Absolutely. Because what is a 5-minute conversation for you guys who haven't lost changes the entire day week, month of the person who has. If you can stand there and be brave enough to hold the space and honour that conversation, you guys have just made a massive difference to that person. And you can walk away and you'll forget about it, but to that person, you'll have made a real difference. So, why does this affect you guys as midwives and people who might not have lost, potentially will never lose? Hopefully, I fucking hope you don't go through any of this and never want to meet anybody because of something that could have been preventable. So, driving. You have to bear with me. I like to think outside the box, and I want to make this as accessible and relevant to you guys so you can understand it. Because talking about child loss, people automatically go into empathy and sympathy mode. We don't need your empathy. We don't need your sympathy. We just need your bravery. I'm going to engage you all now because it's just before break. Hands up, anybody who doesn't use hands-free in their car when they're driving. 10 years ago, hands-free was totally allowed, and I 100% drove whilst on the phone to my sister going, oh. Drink driving? Anybody drink drive anymore? No? 15, 20 years ago, it was really commonplace. Seatbelts? I guarantee you all get in a car and put a seatbelt on. 30 years ago, they weren't even in cars. And this is the beginning of the change in the situation. You guys are going into this changing the situation. And you need to remember that you're going to come up against roadblocks. I remember somebody saying to me, you can't have your phone. It has to be hands-free. I'm like, fuck off. Like, I do my best work driving. And now it's just totally not part of it. And this is where it will become okay to talk about it. We just have to challenge it. So how can you guys help? I don't want you guys to leave here going, that's great, she did a really nice talk and I learnt about seatbelts, but what can I do about it? Because that's not what I want you to take away from it. It's shit that my kid died. It's shit that I have PTSD. And everybody that you hear today and the parents, there are no other words for how rubbish it is. But we need to empower you and we need to make you feel like you can walk into a situation and tackle it. So, offering choice reduces trauma for your families. There were studies done into the people who were part of the 7/7 bombings attack, into PTSD and the results of it. And what they found was that the people who were able to take control, the ones who said, follow me, we'll go out this way, had less effects of PTSD. Now, the statistics flying around that 75% of people who experience miscarriage have some form of PTSD. Now, if you inform families and give them choices in their situation, you reduce their chance of trauma. But also you reduce your own chance of trauma. If you walk out of a room feeling like you can't help a family or you don't know what you've added to their situation, that will stay with you. But if you say, I gave them this, I gave them the option of casting, I gave them the option of memory making, I gave them information of where they could go, you will be protecting your own selves as well. And that's really important when you're dealing with these environments. You have to look after yourselves. Be honest. We don't expect you guys to have all the answers. I don't have the answers and I'm living this. So why would we expect you guys to? What happens is, now that I talk openly about Ben and about the miscarriages that I've experienced, automatically somebody will go, oh, I've experienced this, or oh, my friend experienced it. You want to relate to it. By doing that, you are opening the door. So if you say, I had this experience, other people are going to chat to you about their experiences. hold the space and be honest and just go, I'm really sorry. You are allowed to apologise. You are allowed to confirm their grief. You are allowed to confirm. In allowance, you again reduce trauma because it means that it matters and you are engaging with it. It's important. Oh, what have I done there? Ooh. There we go. Got it. We don't need you to understand. As I've said, we just need you to be there and hold our hand through it. That's all it needs to be. Walk alongside us. The most trauma that I've experienced is from those who refuse to walk alongside me and have turned away. And that's the hard part, is that I didn't ask for this. None of us asked for this. Don't leave me in the lurch. You're a human. You are human. You're going to cry. You're going to get upset. And if you don't, you're in the wrong job. Don't be embarrassed about it. I know I said I'm sorry at the beginning. I'm not sorry that I get upset. It's passion. It's love. If you get upset, that's okay. The problem comes when your grief overtakes the family's grief. If you feel like you're going to be overwhelmed in a situation, say, I'm just going to go get a cup of tea. Do you want a cup of tea? Like, offer them, make it a positive, make it change, walk out, give yourself 5 minutes, because you can't cry forever. You can't, it's physically impossible, I've tried. And it's one of those things where give yourself that space and you will build yourself that strength. Educate yourself. Educate yourself on the resources that are in your area. Educate yourself on the charities that have been in your trust, where you're working. And also just general knowledge that if you come in touch with a family who, for whatever reason, have been affected, might be their 18-year-old was involved in a car accident, or their 30-year-old, I don't know, had a heart attack. There are charities out there who can support you. And these families you might be dealing with, their brother might have died and they're coming in pregnant and you're going, okay, I don't understand why these women are struggling. Grief is a really real thing and it's really overwhelming and really powerful. Some of the main charities that will help anybody, Child Bereavement UK, they support parents as well as children. The Compassionate Friends, they will support, and they are run by parents, for parents, and also grandparents, aunts, uncles. They're an amazing resource that is open to anybody. And then if you can't find Our Missing Piece, my website, that has a signposting service on it. So I've got bloggers, I've got lists of national, England, Scotland, Wales and Ireland, and it's constantly growing when I try and find or people send stuff my way. So if you don't know where to send people, then that's somewhere that you can access that support. Now, before we talked about the name for a bereaved mum, not a bereaved mum, when your partner dies, it's a widow. When your parents die, it's an orphan. There is a word for a bereaved parent, and it's Veloma. It's Sanskrit, and it means against the natural order. It's not in the dictionary, and that is something that I am trying to change and have been trying to change for the last couple of years, because I don't like the word, I don't identify with the word, I think it's shit and I think it shouldn't exist. But if you don't give things a name, society doesn't give them a place. And it makes you feel even more alone and more isolated and more dejected. The word widow means lonely and empty, and it comes from Sanskrit. When that was first introduced, there was a massive kickback, but people go, but I'm not lonely, I'm not empty. And now it's part of what's your marital status. And it's just part of commonplace. It's an easy answer. Veloma, you don't have to explain. You don't have to explain how old your child was when they died. You don't have to give a backstory. How many children, I go to baby groups and they're like, how many kids do you have? how am I supposed to answer that without lying, without being dishonest? But if you could turn around and go, well, I'm a Veloma and I have 3 living children, it explains it without. And we can move on, because Ben dying is part of me. It doesn't identify me. And I try really hard to make it more than the saddest part of my story. Every parent that you meet will want to talk about their child. They don't want to lie, and they shouldn't have to lie because society won't give them a place. Has anybody got any questions? I know that these days are quite intense and you've got a lot of people talking at you. Do you guys feel free to ask me, as a parent, any questions that you might have struggled with? Am I allowed to say that? How would you deal with that? Please feel free. I've got time because I'm good. I told you I'd pull it back. Use this space now, or speak to me later if you don't feel comfortable putting your hand up. Any questions? Have any of you thought of circumstances of like, how would I talk about this? Like, is there anything that any of you are particularly scared about, that intimidates you about going into a setting and dealing with a bereaved parent?
I think it's really important what you said about being human, because I think sometimes we forget, we wonder about policies or procedures too much, and we wonder about doing the right thing. But I think if you sent a child in to deal with the situation, they probably know a lot more than perhaps what we would do. And I think it's really fundamental that you mention that and that we bear that in mind, that we are human.
Yeah. Absolutely. And it's what's really lovely is seeing children handle grief, and the honesty that comes with it. They're not worried about other people's feelings. They're not worried about is this the right time? Have we got enough relationship or a bond? It is straight to the point. Yeah, my brother died. And depending on the circumstance, they might tell you how he died. And I'm like, shut up! I've got to fix them in the morning. Shush. So it's lovely. It's absolutely one of the most, and that's, to me, the purest form of handling grief. And it's the way that I now, is somebody who, the first funeral that I went to was my son's. I've still got all my grandparents. I've never been in any other circumstances. I'm now that's how we deal with it. That's, if somebody says to me, my grandma died, I'm like, fucking hell, you all right? Because it's intense. Grief is the loss of the future with them in it. That's fundamentally what it is. It doesn't matter about how, when, who, where. You are dealing with a future without that person in it. So we all know that. We can all relate to that in some way, shape or form. I know people who are devastated because their dogs are their children and their dogs died, and people are going, it's your dog, why are you bothered? And I'm like, that's their kid. Get over it. It's grief. It's familiar. And fundamentally, child loss is just grief. And I hope that we can take the scariness out of it. It's important and it's wrong, and we need to change that. But in my circumstances, Ben died in an accident. It was never going to change. Him needing his life support removed was never going to change. So my grief is always going to exist regardless of how much help everybody. So if we can just make grief that little less scary and the taboo a little less scary, we will make the difference. And we will have seatbelts, and we will have no drinking, and we will have no phones, and we will make a massive difference. Anyone else?
I've got one, Nicole.
Go on.
Just wondered what your experience was like after losing Ben and then going on and having pregnancies. What was the experience with maternity care like? What were the midwives like? Was it, because as a midwife, I think I would really struggle. Not after today, because this has been wonderful and really, really sort of informative, but what were the midwives like for you, and what message can we take home as midwives if we come across that?
I was really lucky. I had Toby in Scotland, and we had one-to-one care the whole time through. And when we went on to have Edward, because I'm fat, I got one-to-one care too. There's bonuses. But no, one of the things that I would say to midwives is, because of my trepidation of the situation, and I was aware that I had trauma, one of the things that I tried to do with Toby was not go into hospital, because Ben had died in the local hospital. I was like, no, I'm going to go for home birth. I got a doula, and I tried to control my situation as much as possible. Ben's birth had been not tricky, but I hadn't had great care. And so I was trying to make it a positive experience, the birth side of it. And I needed that somebody in my corner to say, hang on a minute, are you okay? And that's why I got a doula, to protect my space, to protect my mental health. Because for me, labour and birth was not scary. Having the baby was. And that was where my mental health struggled, was in the aftermath. I've never had a stillbirth. That's not my experience. So pregnancy after loss was not difficult. Connecting me with my baby was difficult. I was never scared that they were going to die in utero. I was scared that I wasn't going to love them because they weren't Ben. I was scared that they would come out. My children all look the same. They come out and they just the spit of their dad. And I was petrified that Toby would come out and he would look like Ben. I was petrified that he would come out and he wouldn't look like Ben. I was petrified that I couldn't love him because I was so sad. I was scared that I was going to forget Ben. People would forget Ben because I had a baby and I was fixed. But the midwives, everybody who came into that room, I told instantly. I'm bold. I'm a bit of a bull in a china shop when it comes to people. I don't really give a crap about your feelings, sorry. I give a crap about my experience, because everybody walks away and I've got to live my life. So if somebody walked in a room, I was in labour with Toby, rolling down the corridor going, I've got a doula and I need my placenta. And I couldn't care who was there. And then they walked in the room and I went, oh, my kid died. You need to be nice to me. And they're like on their back foot. So I will always disarm people. And you have to be ready for that, because there will be some bereaved parents who are going to smack you around the face with, oh, yes, so my kid died. And you have to be nice to me about it because I'm special. But with Ed, I didn't have the support of the Scottish Cot Death Trust. So I didn't have an apnea monitor for helping sense the breathe. It's a sensor that goes on their tummy and it clicks every time that they breathe. And the Scottish Cot Death Trust provided that for me. But when I was down in London, I did not get any of that. So my mental health was on a real knife edge. And I thought, because, and this is, you get a little bit cocky because you're like, oh, well, I've had a baby, so I'm all right. I've done my first. But actually, I had more trauma with Ed mentally because I did not put the support in place. Because I was like, well, I've had a baby. I don't need a doula. I've done my doula training, so I know what I'm doing. Turns out I totally did. And luckily, Dan was like, well, this is the fourth time round. The midwives asked Dan if he wanted to be a midwife because he knew me so well. He was like, oh, she's transitioning, it's fine. She gets like this. And it's one of those things where he was my support, but I didn't trust him. Through no fault of his own, I needed professional support. I needed someone to understand that my fears in that situation. So as a midwife, when somebody presents you with this information, look for the fears that might entail, because then you can sort of preempt that. Like, how do you feel about bump? Have you given baby a name? if they're struggling. Have you thought about writing the baby a letter? Have you thought, I did a lot of journaling. Have you thought about writing a letter and just keeping it? Because if they are scared that they're going to lose a pregnancy, they're making memories with the pregnancy that they've got. So right in that moment, they are there with their baby and they're connecting with it. So even if the worst case does happen, they've got those memories forever. Pregnancy isn't, your baby is with you from the moment it's conceived, and you change from the moment that they're conceived. So allow them to have those memories, and encourage them, because that makes a massive difference. And it fundamentally changed how I felt about being pregnant and having a baby. Anyone else?
Just shows the importance of continuity.
Yeah, massively. And I was really lucky that my midwife in London, she was away when I went into labour with Ed, but she told 3 other people about my case. And so the second person, it was like the one weekend that I shouldn't have gone into labour, and I went into labour. I was like, oh, because I had this beautiful water birth planned, never got. And the midwife, my one-to-one midwife wasn't there, the backup wasn't there, but they told other people about it, so I trusted. She actually rang up from Malta to go, Nicole's in labour, you need to do this. And that extra above and beyond meant that I was safe. So, right, okay, I've gone over now. Yeah, Chris is like, wrap it up, bragging about me being in time. But yeah, just talk, communicate, ask questions, and educate yourself. And try and protect your own mental health as well. And don't be afraid of taking a break if you need to.